This video is brought to you by Squarespace.
When I first got into parkour, I was like 16, 15 years old. And I got into it because it looked cool. The idea of like jumping between two buildings just seemed like something I wanted to do. There wasn't a deep philosophy that backed it, I just did it because it was cool. Good God, my bonsai tree is dying. But you know, now that I'm 26 years old and I own things like bonsai trees, I've started to get a little bit more introspective, and I really just wanted to make a video explaining what 10 years of doing parkour has done to my life. So let's go back to the start. So I started parkour roughly in 2010. Back then, I pretty much never left the house. I would sit and play RuneScape or Counter-Strike. My parents literally had to put a time limit of what time I could be on the computer, because if you left it up to me, I'd probably continue playing games instead of eating and sleeping and doing, you know, normal human things. But then I came across parkour through a close friend of mine called Greg. I'd see him doing flips in the playground, and it was kind of like the stuff I would see in video games.
Practice the art of free running, or parkour.
And I think straight away, I was just like gripped by how enjoyable doing parkour was. And like how simple it was. You didn't need all this equipment, there weren't like time frames, there weren't strict rules. There's this freedom and just generally it being really fun, you know, going out, climbing on things, jumping on things, acting like these people I'd see in my video games. This had me hooked, like straight away. And then time had passed and I would start to see that I was actually getting like okay. Like I was getting sort of good. You know, I was starting to actually do proper jumps. I was jumping to rails. I was vaulting walls. I was vaulting walls and then landing on other walls. I was progressing. Like I was seeing. The more hard work I'd put into it, the better I'd get. It was a pretty reasonable transaction. And with this progression, I would start to see myself do things that I like genuinely didn't think were possible. I'll give you an example. There was this one jump that was at a school that was near where I lived. And I saw this jump and I was like, "Oi Greg mate, imagine one day we run and do this big jump." That'd be great, wouldn't it? Don't be ridiculous, Jimmy. No one can do that. One day I will, Greg. One day. And one day, me and Greg went to this jump and we did it. I don't know, like watching it now, it probably doesn't look that impressive, but to us, this was like reality shattering. This was like we landed on the moon. And that jump was like a really pivotal moment in my years of doing parkour. I still remember that feeling of making that jump. And from there, it was like just waves of progression. Once that jump had been done, any jump similar was now on the cards. It was now doable. And that feeling of progression really taught me that hard work pays off. And prior to parkour, I'd never really, you know, other than like a video game, I'd never really seen like a tangible result for hard work that I'd put in. You know, like actually grafting at something, doing something that's really hard for you, you keep doing it, and then you get this result. But for parkour, it was like so tangible. You would work hard, you'd get yourself doing these hard jumps, and then you would make something, and the feeling of achievement was just amazing. Oh! And what this was doing to me was kind of like continuously breaking my barrier of what I thought was possible for me as an individual. Prior to doing parkour, I'd often see new things, like people would do cool things and I'd be like, I could never do that. But parkour really broke that in me. I just don't see things these days as impossible. I see everything as achievable. There's a process to get to that point of achieving the thing. Before we carry on with the story, I've got to give a massive shout out to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. Squarespace is the ultimate website builder. What makes Squarespace so good is that it's so intuitive and easy to use. It's the platform that I use for my old parkour clothing brand, but Squarespace is deliberately designed to be perfect for all kinds of websites. Whether that's just your portfolio or you're selling something online, Squarespace has you covered. There are a ton of really awesome templates that you can just use and tweak them to how you want them. And with additional features like appointment scheduling, members only content, email marketing, you can really just do it all within Squarespace and you don't have to hire someone to do it, saving you a good bit of wedge. So be sure to head over to squarespace.com/Jimmy the Giant. And to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain, use the code Jimmy the Giant. Anyway, back to the video. So this, like, I'm gonna say the first 5-6 years was, in my opinion, like the honeymoon phase of doing parkour. Like my whole life, because I didn't have a proper job, everything was centered around just parkour. What little money I did make would go straight into traveling. I ended up traveling all around Europe. The amount of stories I have of me going on these roof missions where we might discover some abandoned building. And on top of that, the camaraderie of doing this with a close group of friends. All of this was definitely like the honeymoon phase. All this talk about parkour is making me want to go out and do parkour. So I'm going to take you guys with me and we'll continue with the story.
And we're outside. We're here. Milton Keynes just training with some boys. Some boys? What does that mean? Jesus Christ. Jesus! Josh just tried to kill me. So this like honeymoon phase would last probably about 5 or 6 years. This was when my whole life was just only about parkour. Like that was all I wanted to do. Just train all the time, go out, go on adventures, and that was the only focus in my whole life. Around about the age of 21, 20, the parkour community that I'd started training with, that was like the big family. There was like older people, there was younger people. It was just one big family and we all trained together and, you know, we just loved doing that. But over time, it kind of disbanded. People grew up and they got jobs, they went to university, and our small little utopia of this parkour bubble just kind of popped. And I would actually say that it was this end of the honeymoon period where I kind of learned the most from parkour. In that honeymoon phase of parkour, I was putting my body through things it couldn't really handle, and it caught up on me. I've spoken about it in different videos, but I very quickly had knee and ankle problems. My knee was always kind of like a little bit niggly and a bit annoying, but my ankle, I actually sprained it. And so for years, I was training through a really bad ankle sprain. I'd let it heal for like a week, I'd just about be able to walk on it, and I'd start jumping at jumps, whilst feeling like insane amounts of pain, but I just didn't care, because I just wanted to do parkour and continue doing parkour at the same level I'd always done it. And at a certain point, I had to face a hard reality. I had to come to an acceptance that my ankle was bad and I needed to let it heal. I learned a lot of acceptance through this. It took a long time. Like I really fought this. For about 3 years, I was still training and pretending my ankle wasn't as bad as it was. But I finally came through to this acceptance that sometimes things don't go the way you want it to. Life will throw you roadblocks and challenges and things that will get in your way.
And just to add in here, there's kind of 2 ways you can respond to situations like this. You can either fight it and pretend it's not that bad and kind of kid yourself, or you just have to learn to accept the situation you're in.
Tricking on concrete is actually better. If you do it on grass, the grass almost takes half your power.
And for me, it was 2 things. It was both my ankle, which was like a physical thing, but then arguably the harder thing for me to accept was that this phase of my life was coming to an end. Going out every weekend and every evening to train with my best friends, have these adventures, push ourselves, this couldn't last forever. People are going to grow up and they're going to move on. And this situation taught me to accept that, and that was such a hard thing to do.
So I think that now, at 10 years into the game, I realised what I should have done differently to what I did do, which was look after my damn body. Oh, my back. I really didn't listen to my body, and when it ached and hurt, I wouldn't stop. I would just continue training through it. And I also never tried to actually strengthen my body to take the impacts it was taking. So standing here now, 10 years later, I realize why I didn't kind of listen to my body. And this was one of the more negative things in not necessarily just parkour, but kind of in any sport or anything that really values a lot of progression. And that is the idea of overly comparing yourself to others. You go on social media, you go on Facebook, and you start seeing other people that do parkour, and they make what you're doing and the things that took you forever to get look really easy. And they're doing stuff that's like twice the size. I found when I was younger, I was often comparing myself to like the level parkour was at. That was always the thought. It was like, parkour is here, I'm down here, I need to try and get up to here. And this added like this kind of unneeded, unnecessary pressure to training. And I'm not gonna lie, it didn't really make training any less enjoyable because fighting to progress was enjoyable, but it would make you take risks and take impacts to your body that maybe you're not ready for. And I personally accredit that to why my ankle got so bad, because I just wanted to progress so much, I kind of didn't care if my ankle was still attached to my leg. And I think the lesson that that's taught me now is that progression is important, and comparing yourself to others is completely natural, and it isn't an inherently bad thing. It can help you, it can make you better. But if you overdo that, you can end up ruining a sport for you. I could have injured myself so bad that I could never train again. And I have seen many free runners quit because either they injured themselves so badly that they had to quit, or that they just got demotivated that they couldn't keep up to the level. The amount of times I'll hear people who've been in the sport a long time complain that they can't be at the level they were when they were like 20 is kind of depressing. Like, I do it. I'm guilty of saying that sometimes. And it's a shame that everything's always about how good you are, and it doesn't necessarily need to be. I sort of accidentally learned 540 kicks the other day, so I have like a little thing where I might be able to do it, so we'll see. If I keep looking for places to do them, I'll eventually get good at them, maybe. And the other thing I've learned through this is sometimes comparing yourself to people who are good actually holds you back from being as good as you could be. I would often find myself over the years in parkour just getting obsessed with like fads. I remember specifically the dive Kong fad. For about 1 year, I only did dive Kongs. Like, I literally would go out to train to do dive Kongs. I weren't even doing parkour at that point. I was doing dive Kongs. When all you do in parkour is just ride fads and trends and you do the popular style of movement at the time, it can be fun, but it can stop you from finding like a truly unique style. So the lesson I learned is just not always trying to copy and clone the people who are good, but find what you enjoy the most and what is unique to you.
And to bring that back to just life in general, that is true everywhere. If you just follow what everyone else does, you're gonna always stay mediocre. You're never going to be exceptional or different or stand out. The people that really change the world, like with innovations, creativity, they are the people that follow what they find interesting. They don't just emulate what everyone else does.
So I went from spending all of my time doing parkour and just working crappy warehouse jobs to get by.
What's our motto here at Crabbio Mondays?
Sincere servants with a smile.
To eventually realising that despite never going to university and getting an education, I had learnt quite a lot from parkour that would be useful in the world of business. I got a job in marketing because of all the social media stuff I did in parkour. And through endlessly meeting new freerunners and just kind of learning social skills like that, all of those things would come in handy when I had like this proper marketing job. And it's kind of like two different things that are at play there. Parkour teaches you like a level of adaptability and creativity. Whenever you're going out to do parkour, you go out and you have to be creative to find things to do. We call it your parkour vision. And I almost feel like this exercise is a part of your brain that allows you to problem solve and find creative solutions. And this ability to adapt all those skills that I'd learned from doing parkour and bring it into a job was because of that way of thinking. And I really do feel like parkour is somewhat of a vessel for you to develop your own personal skills.
Honestly, looking back at these 10 years of doing parkour, I just can't imagine how my life might have panned out if I didn't go down that route. I really have so much to thank this sport and what it's done for me. And I know that parkour isn't alone in this. Parkour isn't like an outlier. You can find the same benefit in tons of other things. But as someone who has dabbled in many different things, parkour to me has always felt the most all-encompassing. The roller coaster of a journey you go through when you're trying to battle for a jump that you might have first approached not thinking it's possible, and you battle and you fight for it for like half an hour to an hour sometimes. And then when you finally get it, there is no better feeling than that. And for me, there is just one final thing that parkour has taught me.
It's going to sound a bit cliche, it's going to sound a little bit corny, but despite what people might tell you, you might really want to be an artist or, I don't know, a professional badminton player. These things are actually achievable. Honestly, pursuing your dreams is a super important thing. If it's a thing that just comes so naturally to you, like the enjoyment for it doesn't need to be forced, it's so easy. Following that thing is super important. And it's what I did with parkour. I followed my interest in parkour. And maybe at first I thought I was gonna be like a professional athlete. That never ended up happening, but I stuck with it. And it took me in a route that I'd never expected. Just talking crap about parkour to a camera. And I really do genuinely think that people can find careers and make a life for themselves doing the things that they love doing. I don't think it's impossible. It might not be exactly how you anticipated it being. You might have to be creative and take a different route, but I do think it's generally pretty possible for most people. And that is one of the many things that parkour has taught me. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. The parkour bucket list is out now, so you can support me by going to jimmythegiant.co.uk, picking up some merch or using the sponsored link below, or supporting me on Patreon. Peace.